Hi, my name is Amanda. I've been doing stand-up comedy for 1 year, and here's what I've learned. If you know me, you know I love a class. I've done trapeze class, trampoline class, dance class, and about a year ago, I enrolled in stand-up comedy class. I never felt comfortable calling myself a trapeze artist or a trampoliner or even a dancer, but I can confidently say that I am a comedian. I think it's because out of all these hobbies, this is the one I've done most consistently, and it's a lot easier to tell yourself that you are something if you're always doing that thing. Your actions inform your identity. And if you're anything like me and find yourself telling jokes into a microphone most nights of the week, soon enough you'll realize that you are a comedian. I think we all know that the younger you are, the more significant a year seems. Like when you're in elementary school, a year feels like 10 years and a day feels like a year. But the older you are, time moves by a lot faster. Like days feel like hours. But in the world of comedy, no matter how old you are when you start, a year is honestly nothing. Well, it's not nothing, but you're still very much considered a baby comedian. Goo goo gaga. I think even up to like the first 3 years, you're considered relatively like green and new in comedy. And it makes sense because most comedy legends didn't become legends until they were decades into their career. That being said, I've learned a lot in this 1 year, and it's a huge leap to go from having absolutely no experience in something to even having just a little bit. So I want to make this video to share with you some things that I've learned doing stand-up comedy. To be clear, this is not a tutorial. I think the only piece of advice I'm truly qualified to give a year into doing this is to move the mic stand behind you when you get on stage. That's a really big thing in comedy for whatever reason. If you don't do it, other comedians will know that you're an amateur. That is actually the first thing that I learned in stand-up class. But if you want actual tips on doing stand-up, I'd recommend checking out this extensive article with great comedy tips from Gary Gulman. Ultimately, this video is just a peek into my experience so far. Okay, the first thing I've learned is that in order to be a stand-up comedian, you do not need to be naturally funny. I know that sounds like a crazy thing to say, but being funny was never one of my standout qualities growing up. I was sweet and hardworking and quiet. I was the farthest thing from a theater kid or the center of attention because I was way too shy to do that. So if you told 16-year-old me or 20-year-old me or even 22-year-old me that I would start doing stand-up comedy, I would have laughed in your face. I think the first time I realized that you don't need to be a class clown to do comedy is when I actually became friends with a stand-up comedian who had a very chill and normal disposition similar to me. I still found it incredibly admirable that she could get on stage and make a bunch of people laugh because it seemed like such an otherworldly thing to do. But it also made me realize that if she could do it, then I could probably do it. I don't know if I would have come to that realization unless I truly had a real life example of a person doing that in front of me. And I think sometimes that's what it takes to do anything that seems impossible, is to literally see it with your own eyes. I feel like this is kind of a reason why stand-up comedy is a male-oriented thing, specifically a white, straight male-oriented thing, is one, because there's like all these gatekeepers that sort of filter out and allow for those specific people to be given these platforms. And then because those are the people who have the platforms, if you literally don't see yourself represented in it, it can seem like very much impossible. I feel really lucky that I got to see that because honestly, I don't really know if I would have come to that conclusion otherwise. I feel like I've always associated being funny with being loud, and I am not a loud person, so I never really thought of myself as a funny person. But in order to do stand-up, you don't need to be the funny friend or the class clown or like the loud one. You honestly just need a unique perspective, and everyone inherently has that because no one else has the same exact thoughts or lived experiences as you. And that's the easy part, having your unique perspective, because that just comes with existing. The hard part is explaining your ideas in a way that makes people laugh. That's where the jokes come in, and I think the essence of writing jokes can be boiled down to surprising people. So in order to be a comedian, you don't need to be naturally funny, you just need to know how to surprise people. And the beauty is that there are endless ways to do it. Which brings me to the next thing I've learned. You don't have to be funny to everyone. This is especially true in the age of algorithms, where most of the content, including stand-up clips, that reaches your feed is meticulously optimized for your propensity to like it or at least engage with it. Stand-up is a medium where you need a room full of people for it to work. You can do it with 5 people in the audience. It's just pretty damn awkward. But whether it's 50 people or 5 people, there's always a chance that they don't like your jokes, or at least they don't like them enough to audibly laugh at them. And in comedy, when nobody laughs during your whole set, that is called bombing. It's kind of the worst case scenario, and I think the fear of this stops most people from even attempting stand-up. But I'll tell you a little secret. I've learned that when the worst case scenario actually happens to you, you realize it's not that bad. Yes, it's horrible. However, you're still alive. And I think the worst case scenario to end all worst case scenarios is literally dying. If you can even be like, wow, that happened to me and that was horrible, it's like, well, you're still alive. So is it really that bad? Bombing in comedy is like the equivalent of Kim Kardashian losing her diamond earring in the South Pacific Ocean.
Oh my god, I'm gonna cry, my diamond earring!
At the moment, it sucks, but in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter. My first comedy show went really well. It was my stand-up class showcase, and the room was quite literally filled to the brim, so it felt like performing to a wall of laughter. I crushed, which is essentially the opposite of bombing. Like, everyone loves you, everyone laughs, they're obsessed with you. And to be fair, it was a class showcase, so the audience was made up of everyone's most supportive family and friends. But I could tell that they were laughing not just out of solidarity, but because they genuinely thought I was funny. And I was on cloud 9 for like the next 48 hours. It was kind of a spiritual experience because for the first time in my life, it felt like who I was and who I wanted to be were the same person. Like, I just never imagined myself to be that type of person who could just make a room full of people laugh. Doing that, I literally felt like I unlocked a new level of evolution. Like, I truly felt like I was a Pokemon who went from like the baby Pokemon to like the middle Pokemon. And I was like, I can't believe I know how to do that. Like, that's crazy. Honestly, that first performance went so well that I almost didn't want to do stand-up again because I thought this might be as good as it gets. And I was kind of correct because a couple weeks later, I went to an open mic. I did the same exact set and bombed. Nobody laughed. Like, it was crickets. And while it sucked, the positive feeling from my first show still far outweighed the negative feelings from that moment. I feel like I was also able to get over it because I saw it as some people like my jokes, and these are just not those particular people. I viewed bombing as less a reflection of me and more a reflection of the audience. They're just not my audience, and that's okay. That being said, if you're going to like a bunch of different places and you're doing the same set and you're constantly bombing, you should probably reevaluate your material. And sometimes I'll do sets where some jokes work and some jokes don't. And I tend to learn a lot from those performances because that shows you that you can connect with the audience and get on the same page. But when you have gaps of laughter, it points to something very specific that isn't working, as opposed to bombing, where it's just like, do y'all hate my whole vibe? or what? I don't want to say that bombing is inevitable for anyone because that feels a little doomsday, but honestly, it can happen. If you go up and do stand-up for the first time and completely bomb, but you still do it again, honestly, power to you. Because I really felt like having that positive first experience to fall back on is what gave me confidence. I truly feel like the key to confidence is like knowing that you can do something. Confidence is talked about in a very like woo-woo affirmations way, which I also appreciate, which I also think is important. But at the end of the day, one of the best ways to be confident in yourself is to do what you say you're gonna do and do it well. And I think because I was able to do stand-up very well and it was very well received the first time I did it, it really gave me this ground level base of confidence that I really needed, especially as a woman, because like I said, it's already so sparse, women in comedy. And I really can't emphasize enough just how that really positive first experience just gave me such a good baseline confidence to keep on doing this thing that can really chip away at your confidence. One time someone told me my comedy was political and I said, that's crazy because I don't even know the 3 branches of government. No, but seriously, someone did tell me that and I was confused because I was like, I don't really talk about politics in my stand-up. I mostly talk about my life. And then I realized I'm a Black person who notices things like race, and that constitutes political comedy, even though I just viewed it as my lived experience. But as a Black woman who has the audacity to get on stage and talk in a microphone, many people are going to see that as inherently political, which is completely fine with me, even if it's not necessarily my intention. But sometimes I do have the intention to be political, and this is one of those moments because I want to talk a little bit about Project 2025. If you live in the US, you've probably heard of it. Even though it sounds like a cartoon villain's evil plan to reshape the United States federal government and take control of executive power, it is a very real villain's evil plan to reshape the United States federal government and take control of executive power. The Heritage Foundation, a conservative think tank, wrote Project 2025 using right-wing policies to consolidate executive power. Amongst many other things, Project 2025 plans to severely restrict women's access to abortion and censor academic discussions about systemic oppression. Project 2025 advocates for privatizing the National Weather Service. Privatization tends to put profits over people, so think paying for a subscription to get life-threatening wildfire warnings. Project 2025 also advocates for eliminating the EPA's Office of Environmental Justice and External Civil Rights, which may endanger $2.7 billion in funding to tackle environmental injustice. This is a government agency that makes sure everyone has clean air, land, and water. It's not something we can take for granted. Project 2025 is also an economic mess, shifting taxes from the wealthy to the middle class. For example, under Project 2025's policies, a family of 4 earning $100,000 would suffer a $2,600 tax hike, while a family earning $5 million would get a $325,000 tax cut, because nothing says for the people like being for the 1%. Thanks again to Climate Power for partnering with me and bringing awareness to these issues. The last thing I've learned about stand-up is that it offers me like a non-digital version of instant gratification, which is kind of ironic to say because I feel like in the past year or so, there has been this big discussion about what stand-up is turning into because of social media, and because like posting clips of your stand-up is so important. Posting crowd work is like such a huge trend that it kind of changes what people expect when they go to comedy shows. But I'm not talking about the instant gratification that you get from like getting attention online from your stand-up. I'm talking more about like actually being in the room and performing comedy. The instant gratification you get is laughter, and it feels honestly pretty amazing. I think it's just like a cool, different change of pace from being a creator, because as a creator, you're definitely trying to get people's attention. You're trying to get in the good graces of the algorithm. But as a stand-up comedian, that attention is for sort of a limited period of time and one moment, and the instant gratification you get, it like ends because, you know, your set is over. Which, as opposed to being a creator online, the instant gratification is kind of different because you post something and you can like literally sit there for like the whole rest of the day, like refreshing your notifications to see like, did it get more likes, did it get more views? So I feel like there's something I've learned to really appreciate about the ephemeral nature of just live performances, and the fact that you don't have to constantly relive it forever. It can kind of be on to the next thing. Even when I do performance and I don't do that well, I think one, it's like a lot easier to get over because there's literally no reminder of it, as opposed to like on social media, on YouTube, if you post a video and it flops, you are kind of low-key reminded of that every single time you log back in. So yeah, these are some of the things I learned from doing stand-up this year. Also, I will say I started doing stand-up because I really want to get into comedy writing, being a TV writer. So if y'all have tips on doing that, besides being a stand-up comedian, let me know. But yeah, it's been really interesting doing stand-up and doing something that seemed so far removed from what I thought I was capable of. I think doing stand-up has also showed me that I have like a pretty flexible self-conception. Even if I can't necessarily picture myself doing something, I will try it, and sometimes I'll really commit to it. And I think it just kind of shows you that if I can do something like this, you certainly can, whether it's stand-up or something else that you want to pursue. Yeah, I think it's just like important to not have one narrative about yourself that you're super stuck in. I feel like for the longest time I had a narrative about myself that I'm extremely shy, extremely quiet. And so I think every single time I do stand-up, it honestly kind of feels like a miracle. I'm like, wow, I can't believe I'm breaking my old narrative of myself and doing this crazy thing. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I'll see you in my next one. Bye.